voted for Scott Walker.
Why does this issue matter to you?
Gosh, I don't know what to... I'm terrible at this.
That's all right. Do you feel like this election could be a factor as far as the presidential election coming?
I do. I think it has a big effect on the presidential election, yeah. And with all the shows that I've been watching, they've been also talking about that as well.
And in the big finish tonight, citizens obviously have a right to vote any way they choose. But after last night's results in Wisconsin, it looks like people are still persuaded to vote against their own economic interests. Now, just the facts. Governor Scott Walker has not been a job creator. He hasn't hit anywhere near the 250,000 mark that he wanted. He did not create a real surplus. He's played with the numbers, no doubt, kicked the can down to the road to other budgets, but there's no surplus, and it's certainly not $150 million. And he is against equal pay for women. So what's going on here? I'm joined tonight by Thomas Frank, authors of What's the Matter with Kansas and his latest book, Pity the Billionaire, and a columnist at Harper's Magazine. And E.J. Dionne with us tonight, MSNBC contributor and senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thomas, let's go to the heartland. Let's go to Wisconsin. What happened here? I mean, is this another example of some working-class voters going against their own economic interests? What do you think?
Well, come on, Ed. This is that's the story of our times, right? Going back 30, 40 years, this is what happens again and again and again. But what's going on lately, okay, I mean, in the last 2-3 years with the conservative movement is something really, really interesting, okay? These guys have taken, as you know, a hard shift to the right. Okay, and they've taken sort of the politics of, say, Herbert Hoover and made it the new politics for our hard times moment. Okay, we're in this terrible economic slump, this persistent economic slump that doesn't go away, and they have made the sort of 19th century banker view of the world the remedy for all that ails us.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing accomplishment what they've done.
It is amazing, and they've got the money to do more of it. E.J. Dionne?
Yeah, that's right.
The working class voting against their own best interests. How do you size it up?
Well, you know, I think that the first rule of democratic politics, with a big or a small d, is to pay respectful attention to why people did what they did. And you talked about earlier, there were some people who just didn't think a recall was right. But I think there are some real problems we progressives have to deal with because conservatives take advantage of them. One of them is the decline in confidence in government's capacity to improve people's lives.
To do anything.
You're right, and that's a real dagger pointed at the heart of progressivism, because we believe government can actually improve things. One of the reasons I wrote my new book, Our Divided Political Heart, was to talk about what government had done in our history to build up the country, to create institutions that made us all wealthier. And progressives have a lot of work to do in that area. Secondly, there's a kind of spiral going on with the trade union movement. When I grew up, unions were a vital part of life. They were a very important institution. People were in unions or had friends who were in unions. It was just part of your community.
Sure.
With a decline in unionization, there were fewer and fewer people who have the experience of unions, and so it's easier to run against them. And with so many, such a big share of the union population and public employee unions, the Republicans can split public and private workers against each other. And the last thing, you said it earlier, is Citizens United. In elections, people often vote for people and not issues. And when you looked at some of the vicious ads against Tom Barrett that Governor Walker was able to run, that also undercut Tom Barrett's vote and got people voting on a person rather than on some of the core issues in this election. And that's normal, but it's something we got to be aware of.
Thomas, what do you make of 37% of union households voting for Walker, a guy who was gone right after their kitchen table, their voice in the workplace, their benefits, their health care, the lot? What about that?
It's astonishing, but then on the other hand, that's pretty much in keeping with how it always goes. But the other side of that coin is that means, what, 67% of them are voting for Democrats. The amazing thing is working class people who aren't in unions who tend to vote Republican by these sort of massive numbers. That's what boggles the mind. Look, there's two. If you look at the arguments the conservatives have been making for the last 3 or 4 years, this is what Pity the Billionaire is all about, okay? First of all, it's extremely populist. These guys present themselves, and they have no right to do it, but they do it anyways, present themselves as the opponents of entrenched power, okay? They have this term that they like to throw around, the ruling class. They're always going against what they call the ruling class. It's preposterous, but they say it all the time. It sort of makes sense in this kind of upside-down world they live in. The other thing is that they have this very utopian view of the world. It's very 1930s. They have this vision of the sort of heroic producer capitalist, whereas a long time ago it would have been the heroic, working man who produced, who built America. But they have this vision of, if only we could get government completely out of the picture, and let the free market do everything exactly as it wanted. That would be a legitimate economy. That would be what would solve all our problems.
All right. Thomas, Frank, E.J., Deanna, I wish I had more time for this because I think this is the fabric of this election year, messaging and the money to do it. Thanks so much.